This video lecture has been produced using artificial intelligence with the supervision of Belhaven faculty.
Hello and welcome. In educational leadership, there's one question that really sits at the heart of everything we do, and it's this. Is what we are doing making a difference? Today, we're going to explore exactly how we can answer that critical question using continuous school improvement and a really powerful evaluation process. This is the question that has to drive every single initiative, every program we launch. Because evaluation in the context of school improvement, well, it isn't about some final grade or a passing judgment. It's a living, breathing, ongoing process. Think of it like a compass that's always telling us where we are, helping us chart a course to where we want to be, and letting us know if we're actually on the right path.
So, here's our roadmap for this discussion. We'll start with the purpose of evaluation itself. Then we'll break down the difference between formative and summative approaches. We'll look at a really practical program evaluation tool, dive into its different parts, and then see how to evaluate your entire improvement plan. We'll wrap things up with a bit of reflection.
All right, let's dive into the big idea first. Evaluation isn't a finish line we cross. It's the engine that drives improvement. It's that constant, ongoing feedback loop that gives us the data we need to make smart, real-time adjustments to everything we're doing. So what do we actually mean by program evaluation? Well, the formal definition talks about the systematic collection of information, but I want you to focus on the why. It's about so much more than just collecting data. It's about using that data to make informed judgments, to actively improve our effectiveness, and to truly understand the impact of our programs so we can make even better decisions down the road. Okay, so to evaluate effectively, we've got to look at our work through two distinct but equally important lenses, the formative and the summative. Here's the core difference, and it's pretty simple. Think of formative evaluation like a coach giving feedback during practice. It's all about the how. It focuses on the implementation so we can tweak things on the fly. Summative evaluation, on the other hand, is like the final score of the championship game. It focuses on the results, the what, to tell us about the overall impact, kind of like a final exam or a big state assessment. And here's the key takeaway. This is not an either-or choice. We absolutely need both. You need to check the engine while the car is running, and you need to know if you actually reached your destination. Effective improvement demands that we evaluate both the process and the outcome. So, how do we put all this into practice in a structured way? Well, we can use a specific framework designed for exactly this, and it's known as the Program Evaluation Tool. The main goal of this tool is to create a shared understanding. It's all about bringing everyone, teachers, administrators, support staff, onto the very same page. It does this by making us clarify a program's real intent, honestly examine how it's being implemented, and then directly connect our actions to our results. This tool guides us through 5 key elements in a really logical flow. It kicks off with the why, the needs assessment. From there, we define the purpose and the participants before we dig into the how of the implementation. And finally, we measure the impact with the results. And here's what the tool actually looks like. You can see how each of those columns lines up with the elements we just talked about. Needs assessment, purpose, participants, implementation, and results. This simple grid gives a team a structured way to have a deep, evidence-based conversation about a program, making sure that nothing important gets overlooked. Okay, so now let's dig a little deeper into each of these 5 elements, because this is really where the heavy lifting of evaluation happens. So everything starts with the needs assessment. This is the compelling data that proves why this program even needs to exist in the first place. From there, we define a crystal clear, measurable purpose. Then we look at participants. Are we actually reaching the students we intended to reach? This step alone can reveal some really surprising gaps between who we think we're serving and who we're actually serving. Next up is implementation. And this part is absolutely critical. We have to spell out in detail exactly what we're doing. Because if we don't, we have no way to connect our actions to our outcomes. And that leads us right to results, where we define how we're going to measure success, not with feelings or anecdotes, but with real, hard data. All right, now let's zoom out. We've talked about evaluating a single program, but we need to apply this same kind of rigorous thinking to our entire Continuous School Improvement Plan, or CSIP. We can evaluate the whole plan with a simple but really powerful 4-column template. We list our activities and strategies, our measurements, and our timeline, but it's that 4th column, effectiveness, that's the real game changer. This is the column that forces us to move beyond just being busy and to start proving that our busyness is actually productive. It is so easy to fall into the activity trap. We start to confuse checking boxes off a list with making real progress.
But completing a task is not the same thing as achieving an effective result. Our evaluation has to constantly push us to find actual evidence of impact, not just a long list of completed to-dos. All right, we've covered the core concepts. Now let's bring it all home and reflect on how you can start applying this in your own work, because that's where the real value is. First, I want you to just take a moment and reconsider this foundational question. Based on what we've talked about, how would you define evaluation now? Try to think of it as a continuous cycle of reflection, adjustment, and a recommitment to getting better outcomes for our students. Next, think about your current practices. How are you evaluating the specific programs and processes in your school right now? And maybe more importantly, based on our discussion, how should you be evaluating them, perhaps using a more systematic approach? And finally, let's look at the big picture. How are you evaluating your entire improvement plan, your goals, your objectives? Are you focused mostly on task completion, or are you relentlessly focused on measuring effectiveness? Answering that question honestly is the first and maybe the most important step toward truly knowing that what you are doing is making a difference.